Hey, I'm James. Welcome to the Shooter's Resource Channel. Today we're going to look at accuracy. Accuracy means a lot of different things to different people. There's combat accuracy, target accuracy. Some people say you only need to be combat accurate, and in some instances that might be true. Other people want to achieve bullseye accuracy, and that's how I started out my journey as a shooter. Today we're going to walk through different tips and practices and things I've learned along the way to make you a more accurate shooter. All right, let's take a look at that and see what type of accuracy I was able to achieve. Because this one was outside of the 0 zone, it would be down 1. For my other targets, I'm down 0. So that's a great example of combat accuracy, or accuracy that is required for your average shooting competitions. Now let's look at some target accuracy. Today I want to talk about accuracy, more specifically pistol accuracy. And when I think of accuracy, there's really two types of accuracy that come to mind. And I'm sure there are plenty others, but essentially there is target accuracy. We're trying to shoot the best group possible, no matter what. And then there is practical accuracy, and that's where you're trying to shoot a good enough group as fast as possible. And where target accuracy is important is where you're trying to make distant shots or very difficult shots, or if you're just trying to impress your buddies while you're trying to shoot the best group possible down the lane at your local shooting club. But practical accuracy is more what is used in a competition environment, or it could be what you use to defend your life. So practical accuracy has its place, and so does target accuracy. And there's a lot of gray area, overlapping area in between. Today, the fundamentals that we're going to cover are going to cover both. And now there are really 4 things that I want to cover when it comes to accuracy. And to be very frank, I am no expert by any means. I'm not a sponsored shooter, but I do have many years of shooting and trying to shoot accurate. I started my journey out as an accuracy shooter, and I think a lot of people do. I was trying to shoot the best groups possible. Then I moved on to practical shooting, and I've really enjoyed that journey as well. But the 4 things that I want to talk about in terms of shooting accurately are, the first is grip. I think it's overlooked by many people that cover accuracy, is the importance of grip. The second part would be sight alignment. So aligning the sights on the target, followed by trigger control and the trigger press. And several people, tout that as the most important thing, that, it's 90% of shooting is trigger control. And I definitely agree that trigger control is very, very important. But I think that sometimes it gets a little more clout than it deserves. And lastly, I want to talk about dry fire. So dry fire is very important. If you ever watch any professional shooters or any really great shooters, one of the things they prescribe to everybody is dry fire. That's because we're not rich. We can't just shoot all day, every day, and practice makes perfect. And so dry fire, essentially, you can practice everything with the exception of recoil management. And it really helps. I dry fire every day, and I recommend you do too. So if you haven't already, go ahead and take a second, hit that like and subscribe button for the channel, and we'll go ahead and jump into the content. First up, we've got grip. Grip is really important, and when people talk about accuracy, I don't hear people talk about it a lot, and I would say they probably don't talk about it enough if they do. So the reason why grip is important is, again, the trigger gets all of the attention in terms of accuracy. But the problem is as you move more into practical style shooting and you want to shoot fast, then you find that if I want to shoot a target 5 times in 1 second for 2/10 splits, which is very common, there's no way that I can put into place every time perfect trigger technique. Therefore, what I have to understand is my grip has to be in such a way that I align the sights and they maintain alignment through trigger press. And through recoil, they return as close as possible back to their original alignment, and I'm able to press the trigger again. And I achieve that through the most popular grip today, which is the thumbs over grip or thumbs forward grip. And essentially, the biggest thing to understand about this grip is these 3 fingers here on your strong arm, you want to make sure that they are doing all the work. What they're going to do is they're going to come around the grip and they're going to press that grip into the palm of your hand. And you're pressing with really good force. I've heard Jerry Michalak refer to it as a death grip. I've heard some shooters say they don't have to grip it as hard. But I guarantee you those guys have been shooting for probably millions of rounds, and they're gripping it a lot harder than what you think. So if you're a new shooter, I would recommend a very firm grip. And all of the force should be pressing the front of the grip towards the rear. And it's causing that grip to press into your soft palm of your hand. And it creates a really good support system. And then what I'll do is I'll take my forward, and you see my thumb is forward. I'll take my support hand, the 3 fingers on the bottom, and I'll wrap them right over my strong arm. And I'll also use those to press the gun further into the palm of my hand. The pointer finger for my support hand, it goes right there under my trigger guard. My thumb goes forward, and my strong arm thumb goes right on top of my support arm thumb. I'm also, with my support hand, getting the palm of my support hand there to get some surface area on the side of the firearm. The biggest thing is you want to have as much contact as possible on the firearm to overcome recoil. You also want to have a nice firm grip, and you want to make sure that you're not torquing it in any one direction, that all of your force is pressing the gun into the palm of your hand. And you leave the trigger finger very loose and very capable of operating without being influenced by the force you're placing with the remaining fingers. And so what that does is that gives you a really firm grip, and it allows you to maintain sight alignment through the trigger press, which is the ultimate goal. All right, next up, let's talk about sight alignment. So to begin with, what is sight alignment? Sight alignment essentially with iron sights is having your front sight post inside of the rear notch and the combination of the two on target. And that's pretty much it. And again, shooting accurately is aligning those sights with your target and maintaining that alignment through the trigger pull. That's all it is. All right. Now that we've gotten that out of the way, let's talk a little bit about focal planes. So there are something taking kind of over the industry, which are red dots. You see more and more of them all the time. All of the more accomplished shooters are, suggesting that everybody go out and get a red dot. They only shoot red dots. And why is that? Well, again, with a traditional sighting system, you've got a front sight and a rear sight, and you have to align those two with a target. That is 3 focal planes. So your eyes can only focus on one at a time. So which one do you focus on? Traditionally, 5 years ago and before, all you ever heard, the secret was focus on the front sight. And I did that for many, many years up until recently, and it works out really well. For new shooters, that might not be a bad idea to focus on the front sight if you have iron sight pistol. But the other option that's very popular and growing in popularity is target focus. And what that means is instead of focusing on the front sight, you focus on the target. You draw your gun, and then on the target, either your sights, or in this case, the red dot, will appear. And what you need to do to target focus is you have to work on what they call indexing. Indexing means I look at a target that I intend to address or align my sights on. And then through my draw, my pistol sights align perfectly with where I'm looking. And now I've gotten to a point to where I've drawn and I've shot so many times and I've done so much dry fire that when I look at something, when I throw my gun up, 99% of the time, the sights are already aligned. And so I have to worry less about sight alignment, especially within 10 yards and closer. When you start getting out 10 yards and further, then the sight alignment becomes a little more important, and you've got to start paying more attention. Now, where red dots come into play is red dots take out at least one focal plane, right? Because now all you have is the red dot and you have the target. And red dots folks really started getting more and more into target focus when they got to red dots. And you can do the same with iron sights. Like I said, you can target focus. And that's what I do the majority of the time. I'm actually training myself more and more to get to where I target focus. But with red dots, it makes it much easier because I'm looking at a target and then I draw my pistol and the red dot appears on the target. Now what that does for me is now my peripheral vision, both eyes are clearly open. In my peripheral vision, I can see target B and target C. So it makes me so much faster and more accurate when I'm going from target to target. It also makes me more aware of my surroundings, and it prevents me from doing things like chasing my gun to the target, meaning, okay, I'm not target focusing, I'm focusing on my sights. And I know I need to go to the right. And so I move both my sights and my gun there. And what happens with that is I overshoot and then I have to come back and correct, or I undershoot and I have to correct. But instead, okay, I'm looking at my target, red dot appears, address, and then in my peripheral I see the target to the right. I'll look at it and boom, my gun comes down and it automatically stops on the target because I'm leading with my eyes. That's hand-eye coordination. And that's the fastest and most accurate way to address a grouping of targets. All right, next we want to talk about trigger control and why it's important. For instance, this Dan Wesson has a super nice trigger in it, really great reset and everything, whereas this Glock has a pretty decent factory trigger. But in comparison to other triggers today that are coming on a lot of guns, it's starting to be left a little bit in the dust, to be honest. Now, this is a Gen 4, and I know that the Gen 5s have a little bit better trigger, but this was considered kind of the gold standard of tactical triggers for a long time. And it's got a few good reasons why. So, number one, the Glock, like most other triggers, it's got some take-up. It's kind of mushy, but it hits a very definitive wall, and that's what people appreciate. It's very definitive. The amount of travel from that definitive wall to the break is not horrible. And the reset on it is not horrible, but it's not the best ever neither. But it's very, very definitive. And people appreciate that, especially when trying to shoot accurate. Now, I shot Glocks for years almost exclusively, and I was able to shoot them very, very accurate. And so I always hated when people tried to give Glock a bad rep for being able to shoot accurate. But there are several people, including myself, that shoot these guns out 100 yards and have no problem hitting hitting targets. Now, let's look at the Canic. The Canic has a little bit better trigger. So you can see that I hit my wall and it's a much shorter travel. These things, and especially the reset, help aid in accuracy. When it comes to shooting accurately, trigger pull is very important. The most important part is consistency. You've got kind of two schools of thought. The larger school of thought tends to be to use the pad of your finger. And the other school of thought is you use the joint or the crease. And honestly, I can't say that one is better than the other. I naturally, because I have pretty much regular size hands, with 99% of the pistols that I grab, the pad of my finger just lands perfectly on the trigger. And so I've always used the pad. And I hadn't paid attention to it, but it worked very well for me. There are other folks that have larger hands, let's say Hickok or things of that nature, who might use the joint of their finger because the length of pull on the pistol doesn't allow them to be further back enough, far back enough to use the pad of their finger. But if you are having trouble with shooting, I can only recommend what I've used because I know it works, is to try the pad of your finger and see if that helps out. But the biggest thing, regardless of whether you use the pad or the crease, is the ability to pull the trigger straight to the rear. And you want to be able to utilize the reset for follow-up shots. So that means, number one, you're pulling straight to the rear. On your follow-up shot, rather than coming all the way forward and then having to go all the way back. And by doing that, if you were to do it, it is just only increasing the probability that you're going to make an error. You just come forward far enough for the trigger to reset. And then you press again to the rear, straight back. Again, the goal is to pull the trigger without moving or impacting sight alignment. You want to maintain sight alignment on the target. So the least amount of work is the most efficient. That's why guns with shorter resets are more desirable. The other parts that come into play is breathing and being calm. A lot of people, the problem what they have with trigger pulls is not that they have a horrible trigger pull and they just push to the left or anything like that. They anticipate the shot. They worry that, you know, maybe the gun's going to explode, or they're just thinking the recoil is too great, or, you know, it's going to be real stiff, especially on the first shot. Or they worry about not hitting the target, or maybe they are shooting a shoot and see and they see that they missed the target on the previous shot and it messes with them mentally. If you can clear your mind of all of those things, remain very calm, and on our next point, practice dry firing. If you can dry fire and hold the gun on the target, so if I pick a point in space, if I pick a target on the wall and I press the trigger to the rear and my sights don't move, they remain on that target, that means I have the ability to do that during live fire. But if I have a lot of trouble doing that during live fire, that means that I'm anticipating the shot. So there's some work to be done there. So keep that in mind. Trigger pull is very important. You need to practice a lot of dry fire, which brings us on to our next topic. When it comes to accuracy, the best thing you can do during dry fire is to utilize the target on the wall. And obviously you must adhere to all the rules of gun safety, with one additional one, that you need to have all loaded magazines and all ammunition outside of the room that you're dry fire practicing in. You want to choose an exterior wall or a wall that is safe, and you want to have a target on it. What you want to do is practice coming up and indexing your target. That's one drill. And you can choose to place a trigger pull on that if needed. And you want to practice just remaining on target and pulling the trigger. Now with a striker fire gun, you're going to have to rack that slide every time. With this double action, single action, I'm able to continue to shoot double action at my target and make sure that I can maintain my sight alignment through each trigger pull, which with this 10 to 12 pound trigger is a little more difficult. But it's a great training tool. If I can do it on this, my much shorter and lighter striker fires or striker fire guns, or this gun in single action, becomes very, very easy. That type of trigger control and grip is important. Now another great tool during dry fire is a red dot, because a red dot gives you feedback. So I'll reset my trigger, pull. What does that red dot do? If it moves, does it move in a consistent direction? Low and to the left, or anyway. And again, as I pointed out earlier, if I'm able to shoot dry fire all day and maintain my sights on target, maintain that red dot on target, then I should be able to do it during live fire. If I'm not able to do it during live fire, it means that I'm anticipating the shot. That means that you've got something mentally going on where you're nervous, and that's very, very, very common. I see a lot of folks that are not able to shoot accurately because they anticipate the shot. So dry fire will tell you, do you have the skill sets to pull the trigger and maintain sight alignment, which is key to accuracy. The other thing to do is practice it one-handed, because now you don't have your support hand. Can you pull that trigger and maintain that sight alignment one-handed? This is completely free. You can do it over and over and over, and if you get really good at it and you can take those skills to the range, which is the same exact skills, you're going to improve your shooting drastically. Your accuracy is going to improve drastically. Dry firing is the way to go. So don't forget to, also during dry fire, to leverage practicing using the reset, because that's what you're going to want to do when you're shooting down range. All right, now I hope that today you've learned some different things concerning accuracy. That's my goal. Again, I'm still learning and growing as a shooter. I recognize that all of us are, and so I want to give tips on the things that I've learned, and hopefully they're different than what you've learned. And if you've got something that you'd like to share, please share it in the comment section, because I'm always looking to learn myself. If you also have any questions about the firearms that you've seen today or any of the tips, please feel free to ask any questions. And if you guys haven't already, take a second, please like and subscribe to the channel. We greatly appreciate any support. You guys take care.